G'day Bodgies and Widgies and welcome back to the channel. Here we are back in front of the 2-foot Nano Peninsula Reef Aquarium, and the system is coming along as good as ever. Today I'll take you through some of the system changes and introduce you to some of the first life forms that we've added into the aquarium. So if you want to stay tuned for that and you want to see the evolution of this aquarium, then feel free to consider subscribing to the channel and giving this video a thumbs up. But I say enough talking and let's have a look at the aquarium. Now, the Nano Reef tank has been running wet for about 2 weeks at this point, and I know that some people might say that it's probably way too early to add any sort of life into the aquarium, and that would be the case if you were doing something like the traditional aquarium cycle. However, I tend to take a little bit more of a modern approach when it comes to cycling my aquariums and rely heavily on bacteria supplementation. To cycle this 2-foot Nano Reef tank, I've been using the Aquarium Systems Lunidose, is it Lunidose or Unidose? It doesn't even say, it's Aquarium Systems Start Your Tank is what I've been using. And basically this is a cycling regime where over the course of 30 days, you're adding in various strains of bacteria at different points of the 30-day time period. To supplement that, I've also been doing regular dosages of the Continuum Bacter Gen M, which is another bottled bacteria. So basically what I'm trying to do is saturate the aquarium with all of the beneficial bacteria to support any small life forms that we start adding into this aquarium to get that ecosystem established. And so on the topic of establishing that ecosystem, I had to start very light by just adding some of the most basic cleanup crew. And that way they can sustain the bacteria populations. Actually, do you kind of see how interesting that is? You add the bacteria to sustain the cleanup crew, and the cleanup crew sustains the bacteria. That's the circle of life. Anyways, so I had to start with probably the most foundational cleanup crew member in any well-thriving reef aquarium, and that is copepods. Copepods are both found in marine and freshwater environments, but there definitely seems to be a much heavier focus on them in the marine world because of how many different benefits they serve. These are absolutely teeny tiny little crustaceans that do a wide range of different tasks like cleaning up detritus, different forms of algae, and that way that keeps nutrients and this whole cascade of different things in check. They also provide an excellent calorie-dense food source for a whole range of different fish. Even some of the larger fish like tangs will actively feed on copepods whilst they're cleaning up things like algae in the aquarium, and that's how you get a diversified and very nutritional diet. So it's pretty much a no-brainer to add them into an aquarium. And so now that we've got the bottom of the food chain sorted through the use of copepods and phytoplankton, we then move up one level, and that's where we get into the main cleanup crew, being snails. I absolutely love snails, both in the freshwater side and the marine side of things, but more so on the marine side because of how much they're, one, loved by the community, but two, how many different snails there are and how those snails all serve a different sort of utility purpose to create this really great balanced ecosystem. We'll start off by looking at one of the first snails that I added into the system that are also equally my favorite snail in the marine hobby, and that is the Nasarius, or the zombie snail. And I'm sure that a lot of people that keep marine aquariums can relate to this in terms of why Nasarius snails are so great, but these snails actually live in your substrate. And they spend a lot of their time during the day buried under the sand. But like zombies at night, and whenever they smell food, they'll come crawling out of the substrate and will try and eat up any uneaten food that will find itself lodged in rocks and clean up that waste before it starts decaying and becoming a whole bunch of nasty pollutants in your water. And to go along with that, because of the fact that they're constantly tunneling and moving the substrate around, they're one, keeping it very well aerated, but two, they're keeping it clean. By dislodging any of the finer bits of detritus that get lodged in the substrate, these things are essentially gravel backing, but loosening. So all of that detritus goes into your water column and gets removed by your mechanical and biological filtration. Now, following the substrate cleaner crew, we've got the algae cleaner crew, and this consists of 3 different snail species, being the Trochus, the Turbo, and the Astrea snail, or the ninja star snail, I think is also what they're called. But these will tackle different forms of algae and also tackle different parts of the aquarium as well. When it comes to the Trochus snail, they're the largest species that I've got in here, and they are essentially the algae-eating tanks. They're these big snails that will absolutely bulldoze through all of the algae, But because they are such a big snail, it's often hard for them to get into those finer nooks and crannies to go ahead and clean up the algae that's growing in those tighter spaces. And that's where the turbo snails come into play. Turbo snails are much, much smaller, and they will absolutely get into those smaller spots under frags, under rockwork, where sometimes the larger shelled trochus can't get to. So having these two species will work hand in hand. And the Astrea snail, I'll be honest, I've only got one, and I added it into the aquarium purely for a bit of variation and aesthetic purposes. I like the way that the shell looks. And for all of these snails, because they are still so new into the system, I've been supplementing them with little bits of nori and frozen foods as settling into the substrate that I am actively observing these snails eat. However, I don't want to stop at snails, and I'd eventually really like to take a big focus on inverts in this aquarium because of the smaller space. I really want to add in some shrimp species like peppermint shrimp, peppermint shrimp. What's the other one? The skunk? Redline cleaner shrimp. I forgot the name because they're both peppermints. But the redline cleaner shrimp, pistol shrimp. I'd like to have a pistol and watchman goby pair. And then just a bunch of other stuff like porcelain crabs, because I think all of these critters together really make it a reef and not just a fish tank. So, in due time. Oh, but on that topic of stocking, I really, really need your help on this, because I'm still very conflicted on what I would like to stock this nano aquarium with. Part of me wants to go the super classic route and get something like a pair of fancy clownfish. I'm leaning towards either black storms or something like a pair of platinum clownfish. But if you had any other alternatives, I'm all ears. And then, you know, just some other stuff like gobies, blennies, maybe something like a royal grummer, and maybe even a small species of wrasse. All of that stuff that you often see in those classic reef stockings. However, being the oddball fish lover that I am, I really am also considering things like a dwarf lionfish, maybe some other smaller predator, or even just ditching the coral reef route and maybe even setting up something like a cold water coastal Victorian aquarium where maybe we can kind of follow the Australian aquarist route. I love his videos, but maybe we can follow his route and see if it's legal, obviously, and go and collect some livestock from the coastal areas around me. And I feel like that would be a super cool aquarium to kind of have in the home setting, because you never really see it all that often, especially for those cold water southern Australian species. So absolutely let me know what you think in the description down below, because I really need like a majority voice to help me get convinced as to what I want to do. And so the last thing we'll go over is just overall system upgrades and some of the things that I finally managed to do on the Nano Reef aquarium. The first of which was install my auto top off. Now the system probably only ran 2 or 3 days without an ATO after it got filled up with salt water. But what I realized is just how much evaporation is happening in that small period of time. So having the ATO on here has been an absolute lifesaver, so we no longer will experience any sort of salinity swings. The next thing I did was actually install the Bubble Magus Q series nano skimmer, but I kind of installed the skimmer a lot sooner than I thought I would, purely because I've added in the snails. I've noticed the bacteria bloom in the water with all these free-floating bacteria in clouds swirling around, and I just wanted to make sure that I don't experience too much of a nutrient spike. And last but not least, I kind of upgraded my lighting. Even though I didn't really need to, and the lighting that I have on this tank is more than enough, a really, really great opportunity came up where I could get a few more bars of supplemental lighting. So at the moment, I'm running the Illumagic Blaze Mini. However, along the sides now, I've got the Illumagic Vita Mini strips. These are the blue light strips, and I kind of have them on purely for display purposes. Anytime I'm trying to get some more glow out of the corals, or I say that like I've got corals in the tank. I'm planning for the future. Anytime I want to get some glow out of the potential corals, or maybe just get that fluorescence in the saltwater aquarium, then I'll turn them on and pretty much just have them on a timer for maybe the last 2 or 3 hours of the day when I want to experience that. But that's essentially it in terms of equipment and how the tank is looking so far. I know that not a lot has changed since the last video, but I really am super happy to have this aquarium up and running. If it isn't obvious through my my absolute gleaming excitement throughout the duration of this video, I really cannot wait to see this aquarium evolve, regardless of the direction it takes, whether it becomes a cold water system, whether it becomes a tropical reef, whatever it is. I'm so excited for it, and I really hope you share that as well. So if you did end up enjoying this video, feel free to give it a thumbs up. If you want to help me with the future of this reef and also just see its evolution, consider subscribing to the channel as well. But Bodgies and Widgies, as always, stay happy, stay safe, stay Aussie Australian. Bodgie out.